Finding our calling or destiny can seem impossible. Most of us feel lost and confused about what we should do with our life. This typically first happens when we finish high school and begin our journey into adulthood. But it doesn't end there. Most of us either fall into a dull routine of jobs that just pay the bills or continue to struggle with this daunting career question. Many of us never get the answers we're looking for. And others still think they're on the right path and then find out halfway through that this is not the right road for them. And even still, if we are on the right track, what may be the right goals and dreams at 20 evolve and grow into something else entirely 20 years later. So how do you find your greatness? Well, for starters, you have to look. Tiffeny Farag thought she found her life's work in medicine. Taking that traditional path at university, Tiffeny found her niche in podiatry. Providing pain relief to those suffering, sometimes for years, Tiffeny drew great strength from the help she was administering. Over time, with her penchant for striking up meaningful conversations, Tiffeny realized she was also providing emotional relief for her patients as well. That slowly became a bigger and bigger part of her work, to the point where Tiffeny could no longer deny this new path laid out before her. She wasn't exactly sure where it would take her or how it would happen, but 3 countries and 2 continents later, Tiffeny has found her new calling. With her podcast, Getting to Know You, she dives deep into meaningful topics and has some very brave conversations. Finding her greatness in the process, Tiffeny is paving the way for others to do the same. I hope you enjoy Getting to Know Tiffeny Farag.
I daydreamed a lot as a kid, and things were happening, but I didn't understand. I'm like, I don't know, things were happening from my daydreams, from like my fantasies, and I don't daydream for 5 minutes. I was daydreaming for hours and hours and hours. I made up whole scenarios, whole things that I wanted and things that I wanted to happen for hours and hours. I can sit there. I do it now. I walk around my room pace doing that. I know it must sound a bit crazy, but I'll do that and I enjoy it. And I'll talk it out loud. I'll look at myself in the mirror and it's as if these things are happening. Anyway, so I forgot about, that effect, or I forgot about it, or I didn't think much of it. But then later, again in my 20s, so I was about 22, yeah. And I got into the podiatry course, the Doctors of Podiatric Medicine. So I finished my Bachelor of Science, and then I got into Doctor of Podiatric Medicine. But before I got into that, I've been applying for medicine. I tried to do the GAMSAT, which is your MCAT version, which is like an 8-hour medical exam, which is just the worst thing ever. Anyway, I didn't do well both times. And I got into the Doctors of Podiatric Medicine. I started into that. You needed the GAMSAT for that too, but obviously the numbers are lower and your GPA in that. I got to about September and I was like envisioning in my head, this course was 3 years, okay? So year 1, year 2, the Doctors of Podiatric Medicine. But I was fantasizing. I'm like, okay, I'm in my first year of the Doctor of Podiatric Medicine. Somehow I get into this medical course, and it's 4 years postgraduate, and the first 2 years are virtual reality, like virtual classrooms, and the last 2 years are placements, face-to-face medical placement. Yeah. I just made that course up in my head. I didn't know that anything of that existed, and I was sitting there fantasizing. Yeah, I'm in my first year of the DPM course. So I'm doing the Doctors of Podiatric Medicine course and the medical course simultaneously. I'm doing them together. This is just my in my head. This is my fantasy that I keep saying to myself, and I've got in that 1 year, so I finished the first 2 years of the postgraduate medical course, which is virtual classrooms, and I'm doing that simultaneously as I finish my Doctors of Podiatric Medicine. So by the time I finish my DPM course, my Doctors of Podiatric Medicine, I'm ready to start the last 2 years of the medical degree, the placements. I fantasize that completely. Okay, September comes along. I'm talking to a friend. Crazy. I'm just sitting there daydreaming about that for a month. I don't know. I'm just sitting there like, for hours and hours a day, just as if it's happened, as if I've got it. And then I call up a friend and I'm like, oh, hey, go on, just normal, hey, how's things? What's been happening? And she's like, oh yeah, a friend, my cousin, he got into this course on one of the islands, a medical degree. And she's like, oh yeah, the first year is done through virtual classrooms. I'm like, oh, okay. Oh yeah, cool. What's the name of it? She tells me the name of it. Someone, oh, okay, I don't feel the prerequisite. Okay, I googled it. I hanged up with her. I'm like, oh, I'll have a look. What is this? I googled the course, and I'm like, oh, okay, I don't fit the prerequisite. Okay, I scroll down, and I'm like, and I see this university, Oceania University of Medicine, medical degree, first 2 years of virtual classrooms, the last 2 years of placements. What criteria? Like you need to have a bachelor's degree. You need to do this. You need all the criteria. I fit the criteria. I have never heard of this university. I didn't know it existed. I had a week later, I sent them a thing. I sent, they're like, oh, you have to have there's 2 levels of interview. So first you have to send your CV, you have to send your degrees, you have to send all this stuff, send it all through. Had 1 round of interviews, which went for about an hour and a half. And then the second round of interviews went for 3 hours. It was at 4 a.m. because they were in the US.
Oh, wow.
2-3 weeks later, I get in. I'm starting the following year, I start the degree. And it was just like, and I'd never heard of this university. It was an American-based university. I know, and to me it was just like, wow, like, I don't know, like, I know that a lot of it is your actions, but you don't think. You're like, I don't know. There was no way of me making this happen.
That's a perfect extraordinary story to roll into this extraordinary interview with Tiffeny Farag. How are you?
Yeah,
that's unbelievable, man. That's crazy.
And they allowed me to do my Doctors of Podiatric Medicine course. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have them side by side. Firstly, as well, no university allows you to do that.
That's
so to me, it was just like, okay, these, when you sit there playing with your brain and you sit there like, okay, just don't even play, just pretend that you've got it. Pretend that it's real. Like, pretend that these emotions, you got in, you're doing it, you're living that life. And I was just doing that because I'm a kid and I like to, that's my way of playing. Yeah. And
well, it goes back to all those same things. It's the affirmations, and it's the, like in The Alchemist, it was the universe conspires to give those who are, I'm butchering it now, but it's like, if you know what it is that you want, if you take the time to visualize those things, I firmly believe that God or the universe or whatever you want to call it works towards giving you opportunities to achieve those things. And that's clearly, I mean, it happened to me time and time again, and that's a perfect example of how it happened to you.
Yeah, it was like, it's something that you just don't, you're like, I can't make this happen. It's just something, and I have a strong belief of that. But I think too, in that moment in time, I was definitely really, really focused on this daydream or fantasy that I had in my head. I was just like really zoned in on it, and I was constantly repeating what I was saying to myself and doing this kind of thing that I was doing every day for a good month and a half before.
I think that's a requirement. I think that's the only way that it makes it work, is you have to have that laser focus. You have to have that vision in order for these things to transpire, for sure.
Yeah.
So that was a moment in time where it really kind of led you down that path of podiatry and becoming an expert in that field. But then in a relatively short amount of time, you took a left turn and steered clear from that path. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I guess like initially in my head as a kid as well, and I think it's from the culture as well, my background's Egyptian, it's always like, be a doctor, be an engineer, be a lawyer. Those are your options. You don't have other options, kind of thing, in that kind of ethnicity. Anyway, so that's the thing that I was really, all right, I want to do medicine. And I love medicine. I love anatomy. I love the anatomy of the body. And I'm just like, I really want to get in. This is all I want to do. And, after getting in, I didn't complete it. I went halfway and some other things hit me. Yeah, I finished my Doctors of Podiatric Medicine course, but I didn't finish the medical course, just a normal Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery. Or it's called Doctor of Medicine. I never finished it. And I was just, in that time, I was just, a lot of it was like leading up to getting into it, and even on the journey as I'm into it and just finishing it, I'm not happy. I feel like I'm working, I took on too much. This is when I don't, advise anyone to do these 2 heavy courses at the same time, or any courses that are too heavy. I was juggling those two well for a period of time, but then when you forget that you're like, okay, my personal life, and if things happen, that then will affect your way of focusing on your career. That was way too much to juggle for everything to be balanced, for me not to break down. And I did. I broke down. I completely I was overworked. I realized my level of stress went to a point. I went to the GP because my level was just like through the roof. I was never at this point before, where it was really like crippling. Like I couldn't get out of bed. So I went to the doctor and I had a blood test, and he tested my cortisol level. Cortisol is to see your stress level. Yeah, and I had my blood test, and the next thing he says is the results came back, and he's like, these levels are too high. Like, there's a point of normal stress, and there's a point of very high levels of stress, and there's a point that is way further than that where you might have a tumor on your pituitary gland. I was in that range.
Oh,
so then he
whoa.
tested and see if I had a tumor on my pituitary gland. I can't even say the word pituitary gland. And I didn't. I reached that level of stress as if I had a tumor on my pituitary gland. And that to me was a moment of, what am I doing? I don't need to be doing this. I don't need it. Like, I'm killing myself here.
Yeah.
I need to focus on me. And then I took a direction. I just want peace. I'm going to take a break. I took a break for a year from the medical course. But eventually, in the end, I'm like, this is not what I want to do. But in that year that I took a break, because you're allowed to do that, I was able to see what I wanted to do more clearly.
What did that year look like for you? I'm real curious.
So what I did was I moved to Tasmania. So initially I was in Melbourne. After Perth, I did my doctor's of pediatric medicine in Perth, and I moved to Tasmania, that little tiny island at the bottom of Australia. Very green. The air is amazing. Like I always I was telling my friends and family, I'm like, you just got to come here, not to say me, just breathe. Just come here and breathe. The air is incredible. And Australia in general, like we have nice clean air, but Tasmania was something else. I think because, it's so green. And so what I was telling in my head, I just want some peace. I need some peace. I need a recharge. I need to bring myself back up to that level of strength.
Reset.
Yeah, I need a reset. So I went to that. I applied for a job in Tasmania as a podiatrist, and I went there and I started my job. And then
But you were able to do that despite not having finished your university
So they're two different degrees. So I finished my doctorate of pediatric medicine, but I didn't finish the Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery.
Gotcha. I see.
Yeah.
So it allowed you to do certain things, but not maybe necessarily everything that you were planning on doing.
Yeah, I couldn't go into and then have specialize in other things. If I finished that course, I would have been able to specialize in other things. So when I went to Tasmania, I rented a house, and then I interviewed some people to live with me, and I got two beautiful people. I'm very lucky that we've all found each other. Like we're very in sync as well, which is like something. Whenever we're three of us together, we're somehow, I don't know, I can't explain that too. That's another thing on its own. But we're very in sync, and we kind of bounce off each other in a way. And there's just a lot of peace and calm when the three of us are together.
Which is exactly what you were seeking.
Yeah, exactly. And they're very much people that enjoy hiking and nature. And then I've always been wanting to get into that, but living in the suburbs in Melbourne wasn't so able to. And Perth is very much a desert. So again, I wasn't able to. But then going to Tasmania, there's national parks everywhere, short walks, long walks, big hikes, everything you need. Waterfalls. I was on a hunt every weekend for a waterfall. So we were doing that and getting into that. And my energy levels were going up slowly, increasing. And just being around people like that, and my eating habits, when you're at that level of stress, just going back a little, what you tend to do is only eat fatty meals, because a fatty meal, like it will make you feel good for that period of time, and then it goes away. But that was the only way of boosting a bit of normality or the decrease in stress quickly. So I'd only eat one real fatty meal a day. That's what I was doing, because I was just super stressed. Anyway, so then living with them, they like eat clean, and they're very like one of them's a vegetarian, the other one isn't, but they eat like nice healthy meals every day. And then I was getting into the habit of that, like being with them, being in that environment. And then my normal mindset, my natural mindset, I'm not a negative thinker. Maybe I'm too optimistic. Like I said, I daydream so much, but my own self-made mentality was improving on itself even more, like that positive stuff that I was doing with myself, plus the physical external things that I was doing, like going for hikes and eating well, and was obviously I was improving quicker than I thought. So after a few months of like a month or two, like I felt clear. My mind was clear. I felt relaxed. I started, like I was just more balanced within. It was just very peaceful. And then
it's amazing how that life, just lifestyle, can really, really impact so much of your mental health and overall. It's not just physical. There's so much of the emotional and mental parts of it that are affected by proper diet and exercise.
Exactly. And like, you need to know, wait, what are my limits here? Like, I didn't think, in my head is, I can juggle. Give it to me. I'll still be able to juggle it into my life. But I was juggling way too much. I'm like, no. Get rid of this, get rid of that, get rid of this. What is making me stressed here? I need to remove these out of my life now. And I'm the type too, is like, even though I was in that mindset, and it really crippled me for a good few months before I went to Tasmania, 3-4 months. I in my head is, I want to get out of this. I'm not staying in this. I do not like the feeling of stuck, because it took me some time to get the job as well in Tasmania.
And the job in Tasmania was still in the field of podiatry, right?
Yeah, in the field of podiatry. But
so
it took me
I'm real curious. You had the opportunity to kind of get your bearings reset and get the cortisol levels back in check. And you were still in that podiatry realm. Was there a point that you still felt the need to then shift careers completely, or what was it from there? Because it sounded like you got to a pretty healthy spot at that point. You were eating right, things are clicking again, and you're finally feeling like a normal human being. Stress levels are under control. So what was it from there that you felt the need to go down a new path and get away from the podiatry route?
So a lot of that came down to me actually speaking to friends. I'm a listening ear for a lot of people. That probably added to my stress at that time when I was in Perth, because I am a listening ear for a lot of people. It was overwhelming because I had my own issues with I couldn't manage myself. I can't hear what you've got, right? Like that was just to a point where it was too much.
My own mess going on.
So that's why getting away from everyone, including, I needed to have that peace for myself. But I was still, answering the phone and having chats with people and like, what do you need to talk about, or what do you need to let out or vent about, or so on. And I got to I was, people have problems, which is normal, but I was hearing things, I guess, quite regularly. Friends were, I guess, going around in circles complaining about the same things. And I'd always give advice and I talk about these things, but it's just like, what I'm saying to them isn't clearly, they're like, yeah, they agree, but they don't do anything. And so I was like, all right, well, what do people really, who do people listen to here? They clearly only listen to themselves. So I started kind of like thinking about things like that. And then I really was, in that period of time, I was getting into like psychology and reading about the mind and about myself and my behaviors and trying to understand my thinking and that. And in period of time, I was trying to understand other people, like my friends and their thinking patterns and their behaviors that are allowing them or not allowing them to get out of a cycle or break a pattern. A lot of it too is break patterns in our families, that a lot of ethnicities have very hardcore, strong patterns that they really embed in us that a lot of people struggle to break out of. That was a very big struggle for myself included. And so hearing these stories and all these cycles, I started like really wanting to like go into that area, and I started talking with my patients more and more about different topics that are relative to psychology and the mind, and hearing their stories too, like listening to them and the elderly and what they have to say. Like a lot of people ignore that, but I was getting a lot from that. And what I kept on hearing was, all the regrets that these people have who are in the 80s and 90s now, it's all things they never did. It's not things they did. They always regret things they never did. And that kept on being reiterated to me. Don't follow your heart. Go do what you want. Don't listen to anybody else. Go do what you want. What makes you feel good. Because in the end, that's what matters. What makes you feel good, what makes you go and do that. And that was being reiterated. Yeah, throughout that whole year. And I was telling myself, I guess I let it go through that big year, and I started coming up with these different projects that are relative to the mind and trying to play with the mind. And I realized that, okay, I need the space as well. You know, when you're working, I get a lot of the time when you're working a 9-to-5 job, and there's a lot of, you know, I need to be completely focused as well with the patients. I'm doing one-on-one. There's a lot of patient care. It's not just that. It's like there's the counselling aspect of it too, and all of that. When you get home, you know, emotionally, mentally, it is a bit draining. And I used to go to yoga and meditation. I started getting into that because of my housemates also, because they started getting into it. So that was another great lifestyle change that I added to my life, which I'm so grateful and thankful for, because it just suddenly, like, it felt very natural for me to do. I couldn't, obviously, like, my body is not able to, like, me manipulate it in certain positions. So, like, that's just to its own limit. That's fine, because I need to exercise and move those things. But I was very much resonating with the breathing and the meditation.
Once you get old and broken like me, it gets really ugly.
It's worse. Oh no, my hip flexion is really bad. Like, I can't.
My form is terrible.
I don't bend at my hips. I can't bend over my body.
So no downward dog for you?
No, I do it, but I struggle. But, like, even when you're just standing up straight and you just bend down and you're meant to, like, let your body fall onto your legs, I can't get there. I'm like at a triangle. It doesn't get there for some reason. Anyway, so that was another lifestyle addition in my life, and so I and then my mind started going into that. I started reading all these books, like, you know, one big one that's really stuck with me and that I'm working with a lot is The Buddha's Brain by Rick Hansen. It's about the practical neuroscience of happiness, wisdom, and love. And in there's a lot of science, a lot of psychology that really resonated with me. And I started wanting to apply it in my life, and I wanted others to apply it. But you can't push these things onto people. I don't want to either, just with friends and that. And I started coming up with these projects and things that I wanted to do. But again, you know, I don't have the space and the time to focus on them. And what I told myself is, what big thing that I do want to do is move to Europe and live in Europe for some time and just see how that goes. I will obviously not be doing my job. I applied for a job and I got a teaching English job. Teaching English 4 hours a day, 16 hours a week. Perfect. How much time do I have for myself? So much time for myself. 4 days a week, 4 hours a week of work. Fantastic.
So it wasn't so much that you were trying to get away from the podiatry, is that you had an opportunity once again to create a lifestyle that resonated with you.
Exactly. So I'm like, okay, I want to give myself this, you know, a lifestyle like this, but also not to get away from podiatry, but really focus on myself. I wasn't
gives you the time and the ability to do that work.
Exactly.
On you.
I was enjoying understanding myself. I was enjoying working on myself. Like,
that self-discovery period is so much fun.
So much fun. I'm like, I just want to do this all day. I don't want to, you know, I don't want to do anything else. I just want to do this all day. And so,
wouldn't it be great if that's all we had to do, just sit there and fantasize and daydream about all the possibilities?
Exactly. But I guess that in saying that, that's what's made me start as well. Is like, I told myself, you know, sometimes you get to a point where it's like, well, Tiff, do you just want to daydream or do you want to make this stuff happen as well? Sometimes those kinds of daydreams where I'm like, no, I don't want to just live in these daydreams. I want to make a reality. So that's when you started taking the action too. So I started applying. I'm like, all right, this is what I told myself. Like, I'm very much a big one of signs. So I saw this wall and it said, get ready to move. It was a brick wall. Get ready for a change or something like that. And I was like, it was kind of going around that. I'm like, all right, I'm comfortable where I'm at. I'm grateful for what I've got. I'm grateful. And I was really practicing gratitude as well. It was a big key. And then I was telling myself it was March. I'm like, all right, before my 27th birthday, I'm going to know where I'm going. And it was the start of March. I'm going to know where I'm going. Something's going to happen. I'm going to know. I'm going to make a change before my 27th birthday. My birthday is March the 27th, and that was the thing I just told myself. I'm like, this is what you're going to know. And I don't know, I was just sitting there one day, and like, oh, okay, a week went by in March. I'm like, all right, jobs in Europe. That's what I Googled. And then this job popped up of, all right, language ambassador in Madrid, Spain. Fantastic, let's go. Applied, sent everything through. In 2 days, you've got your interview. All right, had a Skype interview. We started chatting, joking around, mucking around, and then he's like, "Oh, you'll find out next week." I'm like, "Well, I kind of told, I was like, come on." I thought his name was Juan or something. I'm like, "Juan, come on, am I in?" He's like, "Yeah, you're in. You'll just get the paperwork next week."
Nice.
Yeah. So, and a week later, I got in, but the job wouldn't have started till 6 months, so it was till September. But I was, it was good to, prepare and organize things and get all that going.
Well, yeah, I mean, you need some time to, that's a big transition going from, were you still in Tasmania at the time, or did you go back to Perth before you headed out to?
No, I was in Tasmania at the time, but I did decide to go back a month with my family before I went to Spain.
Well,
so
good decision for sure.
Yeah, I did that. I spent a month with them, and then I came to Madrid. Never been to Madrid before. I was just like, all right, here we go. Let's go. A lot of people think that's crazy.
You didn't speak Spanish, obviously.
No, I don't speak any Spanish. I speak Arabic because of my background. There's a lot of people here that do because a lot of Moroccans in Spain.
I didn't think about that aspect. So that actually probably served you well. You could kind of have a little cultural community kind of area that you could relate to a little bit.
Yeah, kind of that. But I think my personality too, like, I don't mind, even though I see the, maybe culture a bit like reserved, I don't mind putting in that extra work to.
Well, and you're a very, very outgoing person as well. I mean, you're looking to have interesting conversations with people by design. So that puts you in a really good place to be able to go and have the confidence to go and do something like this. So.
Yeah, I don't hesitate to be like, oh, hey, how you going? What's your name? Where are you off to? Oh, I'm going here. I'm from here. And then I just start going, and then we start, you start talking.
And you've been there ever since, huh?
And I've been there ever since, yeah, but traveling all around Europe and other countries.
Have you got to do some other travel throughout Europe?
I have, like last year, even though like in that career choice that I have at the moment, I don't make as much as I was doing podiatry, but I've actually traveled a lot more. I've traveled to 7 countries last year.
That's a great point, because what would you rather have? A little bit extra money in your bank account, or the experiences that you got to have traveling throughout Europe?
Exactly.
I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? I'd take those experiences 100 times before I'd take a couple extra bucks in my bank account. We all get so hung up on money so often and talking about getting out of that 9 to 5. It's like, man, money, once you get the bill collectors taken care of, there's a lot more to life than just that big bank account. What was your favorite place that you got to travel in Europe?
Oh, so my favorite place, I'll have to say, is Mykonos. Mykonos, Greece.
I don't even know where that is.
Oh, you have to go there.
Oh, it's in Greece. You said Greece?
Yeah, in Greece. That beautiful, one of the Greek islands. I highly recommend Mykonos to everybody.
Nah, Mykonos. Okay, now that rings a bell to me. Yeah.
On the islands of clear water, but the Greek people too, like they're very, like they speak to you as if they've known you for years, like you're a friend of theirs. And they're very inclusive and want to like come and sit with us. Like you'd be walking even in Athens, and not even just the islands, and there's older people just sitting in the cafe, and they're like, "Hey, come on, where are you from? Come sit with us. Come have a chat. Okay, let's sit down and talk." They were very much like that, and I felt very alive. Like I felt like, yes, the country's economy is not well at all, but the people know how to live. They don't have money, but they know how to live.
There you go.
I loved it.
Lifestyle design, man. I'm telling
Yeah.
you, there's something to be
And
said. Well, that's one of the things I love about where we live in this area of the country, in the South, is what we call it. Is that's the kind of same kind of mentality that you wave to everybody that you come to, you strike up these conversations. I mean, it's obviously not like that with everybody, but you kind of have that sense, and that's kind of like embedded in the culture a little bit, and that makes for people who come to visit such a rewarding experience. Yeah, that's really cool, man. I like that.
yeah, you feel good. Like they gave me this sense of I've never been to a country where I didn't want to leave like that. Like I know I'm living in Spain, but Greece gave me this different feeling. Like I was just like, I just want to be here. Like the way the
Yeah.
people are making you feel, it's very warm. That warmth, I think, isn't apparent in a lot of people. Like they don't like to, like I'm sure it is inside, but they don't like to express it. But the Greek people
Sure.
are very warm and they do express it and like to express it a lot, which is
I
makes me
love that.
feel, yeah, it makes me feel like belonging, like part of them and not, it was really nice. And they
Yeah, you're
really
just
like,
spreading some love in the world, man, when it
yeah,
all said and done.
it's such a nice feeling.
That's
Yeah,
great.
that was
That's
like, I haven't been back there, but I really want to go.
So what was the most I'm curious, so you got to travel extensively. What was the most difficult experience that you had through all of your travel experiences? Was there a story or anything that was a harrowing or just a difficult situation that you had to get through? What was your most
Oh,
troublesome time?
a difficult experience. Oh, I remember when I traveled to Guangzhou, China. Now, that part of China does not get many
Oh wow,
tourists.
you've been to China too.
Yeah, they don't get really many Western, like just different people. And that was a difficult time because I experienced a lot of like, not discrimination because on like my color or what country I'm from, but because of the shape of my body and
Interesting.
the shape of the body of the people that were with me. We were being pointed at and laughed at based on our size because in that part of China, their body's very small, they're very thin, very very thin, and we were bigger than them, and we were like every time we were eating, old, young people, like wasn't one or two people, everyone was pointing and laughing at us
Huh.
and calling us fat.
In Chinese or Mandarin or
Well,
whatever.
and like making fun of our size.
Cantonese. That's funny.
And I was getting like really
And that's funny because
wounded
you're
up.
not a large individual like by most other
No,
traditional standards or whatever, like you're a normal looking
yes, but
person.
for them, we were large,
That's
and
funny.
it was just like I was shocked, like because they were like not just children doing that; it was people in their 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s.
People who should know better kind of thing.
Yeah, and it was just like I'm like, how are they? And I was, it was pushing me to a point of wanting to do something back.
Hmm.
So I found that
Wow.
that was a very difficult like week where
Yeah.
where we were there. Like I didn't want to like leave the hotel. I didn't want to go
Mhm.
outside. It was especially when it's like that and um you don't know how to behave. You're like, well, what?
Yeah, like what's the proper reaction or
What do
yeah,
you
and you're
do there? And people like
yeah,
pointing
you're
at you and laughing about your physical because you're bigger than them physically.
yeah, that's weird. I don't know what I would do. That's a very,
Yeah, I
very
that to me
situation.
was probably it
Mhm.
put me off and it made me like um yeah, that was probably my worst situation traveling.
So I'm curious, you've been in Madrid for a little while now, and you're still kind of making your mark and creating your own path and everything. Um, what does the future hold for Tiffany?
Oh, I'm still like fantasizing about that, Nate, at the moment.
I
Like as I
figured
was,
you were.
I'm fantasizing really big. Like I'm, all kinds of things are coming up, and I'm inventing.
What does that look like?
It looks like I guess as I've obviously started my own podcast, and my big thing for me is it's called Get to Know You because I find the more you get to know yourself, the better you are at understanding other people. Like the more curiosity that you have about your thinking, your behavior, everything that you do, your mental, emotional, physical behavior, everything, the better you are at understanding others, and also the better you are at allowing others to get close to you. A lot of the time we don't allow people to get close to us because we don't know what they'll find. We're scared of, oh no, they're getting too close. I don't know how I'll behave. I don't know my own actions and behaviors because you haven't explored that yourself. I like to have conversations where we do that and for others to hear and listen to it so they can think about them and play them out in their own lives with their friends and family and understand themselves. And I want to create a community and gain different perspectives on different questions that allow us to give clarity into what we do think about certain topics or certain questions that we bring up. And I see myself, I see I hope there's a strong, community that I've created, and this is built up, and then there's all these different questions that we all want to explore, and possibly having these meetups where people can, sit down and have these conversations, because there are many people in our lives that we can't have these conversations with. Yeah, you have all these friends and family and your normal people that are with you, but to be honest, for myself too, I have many friends and family, but I would say there's only a small group of them that know how to have these conversations. So it gives these people a place to meet other people who also want to think about these things and communicate and add and engage and kind of talk about these things. So yeah, I see that growing into something more than just me making these podcasts. And yeah.
Well, I really love that premise because I think it serves a couple of different purposes. I think so many people don't take the time to get to know themselves first and foremost. And you're right. I think a lot of times the reason why we don't, and the reason why we don't open ourselves up to other people, is because it's scary. It's scary to see what's going on with you, what your faults are, where your shortcomings lie, and what you need to work on. But two, the other aspect of it that I think that really is pertinent to now and the situation that we're in is we're all so quick to give advice or to tell somebody else how they should be living their life or what they're doing wrong, or you should be wearing a mask, or you should not be wearing a mask, or you should social distance, you should, we're all so ready to interject our opinion and what we think is right onto society, and it can go even deeper than that. But we got to start at home first. Until you're making your own bed, we shouldn't be telling somebody else how to make theirs. And so many of us, and particularly on social media, we're so quick to point out what everybody else should be doing. And we don't ever take 5 seconds to take a look at what are the stupid things that I'm doing right now that are negatively impacting my life on a day-to-day basis that I could change.
Absolutely.
And if we stop and ask ourselves honestly the answer to that question, then we've got a starting point. Then we can start to work on something. Then we can worry about, all that other kind of stuff. But that work starts at home. And then, like you just were saying, getting to know yourself. Then once you know who you are, then you know what you want. You know what to strive for. You know what to set your goal up to be. You start to see the vision of the future and then craft the lifestyle around that. But you can't set goals. You can't achieve results. You can't do any of those things until you get to know yourself. Until you get to know what it is that you actually want, what's important to you, what's important to you 10 years from now. We're so short-sighted in our thinking. And the fact that you're exploring that route as a premise, I think is beautiful, because that's where it all starts for all of us. You have to have a starting point. Because if you set goals for all these other things, if you haven't started with that, then your goals are going to be wrong. You may be working hard and you may be making progress, but you're making progress in the wrong direction. You got to know yourself in order to be able to know what those goals are supposed to be. So that's a brilliant way that's a brilliant concept for a podcast, number one. So I love that. But number two, you're laying a foundation for every person that you talk to then springboard into whatever it is that they need to do to become their best self.
Exactly. That's a big thing at the end of my podcast. I like to ask them, how has this made you reflect, or what are you taking away from this? How are you going to apply it into your life? Whatever question and what we talk about.
When you asked me that question, it threw me off a little bit because, so many of these podcast type interviews were all theorizing. We're all talking about like best practices and things we do. Very few people and very few conversations are like, well, what did you actually get from this? And that was one of the things I liked about when we first spoke, was the fact that, you know, we didn't just talk theory. Well, we did, and to my fault. Like, that's what I love about what you're doing. What is it that you personally took from this, and what is it that you're going to do with it? You know, like, what's the answer to that question? And that's meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I guess the
It
impact that I
threw
want to
me
make.
off, man. It was hard, you know. It's kind of
It is
scary. It's
hard,
intimidating.
sure.
Like, oh, I got to answer for myself. I got to be held to the same standard that I'm talking to everybody else about. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about habits and lifestyle, and you're really good at meditating and some of this yoga stuff. What is one thing or a habit that you do that most other people don't do that you think contributes to some of your success?
I think even though you get these knockbacks, because I've tried all these different things, that I contact a lot of people because of my projects and things that I want to do, and door after door closes and closes. I think one thing that I have and that other people have said to me is that I think I am resilient. I'll keep going. I got backed, I got pushed down, like really far down. I'm going to get back up. I'm not going to get stuck. I do not like that feeling of being stuck in one position and not growing and not progressing and not trying something else. Try another option. That to me is a feeling that I do not like, and that I just can't do. So I think for me,
where do you think that comes from?
I think that comes from that whole experience where I was talking to you about before, that few months, that was just 2-3 months of that really sunken, stuck feeling. I didn't have a job. I was living with my parents. My stress levels were through the roof. Everything was just ground zero. I didn't have anything. I didn't have any belongings. I didn't even, I didn't have a car. I didn't have anything. I had to sell my car to go back. So I felt like I had nothing, even though I had my degree because I finished it. But I didn't have it. It took, some time usually it takes to find a job. But when you're at those high cortisol levels as well. But those 2-3 months being at the, to me, that was my worst ever time. There's nothing else that will be as worse than that. I've already been through the worst. And I know.
And now that you've been through that, you feel like you can take on anything, right?
I can, yeah.
Now that builds to that endurance factor, that builds to that resilience. Every time you come through one of those harrowing or challenging experiences, you're more fortified. You're stronger than you were before. You know now that you can overcome a tougher obstacle.
Yeah.
I relate that a lot with marathons and a lot of the endurance racing and stuff that I do. It's like once you've accomplished something really, really, really hard that was difficult and it sucked and you didn't enjoy it, but once you've accomplished it, then that builds you up for that next one. You just got a little bit stronger. Your armor got a little bit thicker. You're able to endure just a little bit more for the next time. And the next time it gets a little bit easier. But you have to go through those hard things to be able to build that resiliency.
Exactly. And the thing too is that for my stress levels to go up even a little bit, that doesn't even happen anymore almost. Because I had I've shifted the whole thing, went from here to, did a whole 180. I had extreme, and now because I went through some, really hard, difficult time, not getting knockbacks or little problems that you have here and there, that normal problems, or financial or things like that, they won't cause a spike. Oh yeah, okay, it's going to sort itself out. I know, that, these things that I say to myself, and they do, it ends up sorting itself out somehow. But
and the healthier you get and the healthier lifestyle that you maintain, the more you're able to regulate a lot of that. I mean, exactly. We're all going to have these moments where things flare up and get difficult or whatever, but the more of these practices that we preach about, the more we implement these practices, the easier it is to handle those kind of situations.
Yeah, and they don't make us strong, shaking. They don't shake you.
Yeah, they don't rock your foundation the way they did before.
No, they do not.
Well, and that goes back to that purpose and vision as well. I think when you have the more you understand your life and you understand your long-term vision and goals, the little distractions that come up on the side are a lot easier to just slough off and not think about, not pay attention to, and not take offense to. That's a
Exactly.
big one for me. Like we're so quick to be offended, and we're so quick to be put off by some little minor insignificant thing. Well, if we've got our eyes on a prize that's really important to us way further down the line, I don't have time for that nonsense. I don't got time
No.
for that trifling. It's like I'm on a mission. I got somewhere to go, and just get out of my way because that's where I'm headed.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You've had some pretty influential people in your life, and you've gone through some stuff with family and everything. Your grandfather was a real big mentor for you growing up. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, for me, there's no one else that's been like him. Like every time we would sit down and have a story, he's not around anymore. He passed away a year and a half ago, but, his stories have stuck with me. His life story has stuck with me. It's like, oh, like it's incredible. Like the things that he's been through in his life and where he got to is just like, wow.
Would you be willing to share with us? I'd like to share his story about how he came from Egypt to Australia and that whole thing. But
Sure.
then also, I'd like to hear that. But I'd also like to hear a personal experience about you growing up with him that made an impact on you, a time that he made an impact on you.
Sure. So yeah, my grandfather, he was when he was 5, his parents both passed away. They got ill. This was obviously, back
And
in
this
the
is in
20s.
Egypt.
This is in Egypt, yeah. This is in Egypt. And after he was 5, he had to actually move in with his uncle. Now, his uncle used to beat him, actually. And he took him out of school. He allowed the older brother, because my grandfather had an older and a younger brother. He allowed the older brother to continue school, but he took my grandfather out of school. Anyway, so then he made my grandfather do all. I don't know why, he was just picking on him. Made him do all like the dirty work. Walk 10 miles to go get bread and milk. Oh, you came back, you took too long. Okay, hold a chair up above your head. You're not allowed to put that chair down, kind of thing. And these were the things he was telling me. And so when he turned 11 years old, he ran away. So he ran away from his uncle, and he started like trying to work in different stores in Egypt at 11 years old. So one time on the streets in 11, the British Army were in Egypt, and this other man was about to hit my grandfather, and the British guy said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he defended my grandfather, and he took my grandfather under his wing, and he took him to their camp. And because my grandfather was living on the streets and living with them, he ended up being their translator. He was the one working at the front gate. He was their translator at 11 years old, and he was pulled out of school when he was 5. And he was living with them, and like they were paying him well and feeding him. And I think he was like one of the first people who was telling me. It was an interesting, funny story. It's like, I was probably one of the first people who had a hamburger in Egypt. And he's like, I had a full meat hamburgers. Like he was telling me when they had dinner, they'd have they really fed them well there. I'm like, oh wow. And or a Coke. He's like, I was probably one of the first to have a Coca-Cola as well. I'm like, oh wow.
Well, especially given his background and his history, I mean that's a pretty huge experience for a little kid.
Exactly, for a little kid.
A Coke and a hamburger is a huge deal for somebody who's never got to experience that.
Yeah. So he was able to, he stayed with them, was working with them till he was about 17 or 18, and they picked up and had to go. But he was getting paid. He was getting paid more than his uncle was getting paid. So,
Wow.
He was able to save all of that. But then the American army were in Egypt. And then he started working with them and became their translator. And he traveled around with them too. So when the army was moving around to like Libya, Italy, and all these other places, he was going along with them. And so after he turned like 25, he's like, all right, I want to get married. So after he left them, he went back to his normal village, and there's somebody that he remembered from childhood that he just like he knew was for him, kind of thing, when he was a child. And so he went
on somebody.
Yeah, exactly. So he went back there, went and saw her father, sat with her, of course, and saw her father. And they started talking, and then they obviously went ahead with that, and they got married. So my grandmother and my grandfather, because he was traveling around a lot, and he wasn't in the I know people think probably Egypt is very conservative and there's a lot of like the stereotypes with and things relative to like women aren't allowed to do. But my grandfather wasn't like that at all. Very open minded because he lived with all these different cultures of people and traveled a lot. My grandmother was working. They were always like having people over. Like, you know, my family are Coptic Orthodox or Christians. But yeah, they were in the part of the community, like friends from all kinds of religions and everything. And they had a strong involvement. She had a strong involvement. She was working with him. And they started making, one of their first things that they started making jumpers. They got these sewing machines and they both started making jumpers. Winter jumpers.
Oh, like the clothing, like the little jumpsuit thing. Yeah.
Yeah, they started making clothing. What do you guys call it in the US? Sweaters? You guys call it a sweater. Sweater, yeah, that's what they were. So they started making sweaters, and they got that going. And then you know, he had a full like factory, had a few people working on them, full like factory going, and but he fell sick. When he fell sick, his brother kind of went in debt in his own kind of thing, and his brother sold his company.
What?
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, sorry, I needed to do it. I was in debt." It's like, "Oh, I think my grandfather, when he was telling me stories, like, yeah, I was shocked, I was surprised, but yeah, he sold it. Yeah, so that was kind of a bit hard for him to hold. But in that time, I guess that was one of the things that they tried. He was also he had to go back to working 3 jobs. So he was doing like day shift, evening shift, night. Like he wasn't even sleeping. My grandmother was trying to like work as well because, you know, as the years were going by, he started having 1, 2 to having 5 kids. He has 5 sons, and then they got
would necessitate the jobs for sure. Keep them fed, not easy.
And he started. I think he was working back again with the American Army, because they were still in Egypt, and they wanted families to immigrate in the 70s. They wanted families to go. So he had the opportunity to go to America, England, Germany, or Canada. He said, "Oh, Canada's too cold." So he kind of Germany. I don't know anything about. He didn't know much about Germany. He's like, "Oh, I don't know what's going on in Germany." England, America. Oh, I don't know. And well, then one day he was in the street in Egypt, and he was like walking past this cafe, and he saw the Australian Army, and they were in this cafe, but they were pickpocketed. Someone, you know, or a few people stole their wallets, and they trashed the cafe. They threw the chairs. They fully trashed the cafe, and they said, "We aren't leaving until you get our stuff back." And they got their stuff back. So my grandfather was like, "Whoa, these Australians, they're real men. I'm going to Australia. I'm taking the family and we're going to Australia." So that was his decision to go to Australia. And it all kind of lined up. And like Australia at that time too. So it was 1971 when he left, September the 1st. They were wanting families to go to immigrate there and, you know, start, you know, working in that. And everything worked out. Like he was getting a lot of family and friends were like, "What are you doing? You're going to be working. You're going to live on the streets. You're never going to grow. You're never going to have anything." And,
discriminated against, all that.
Yeah, and he's like, "No, I have this feeling," because his sons were now getting to an age where they'd have to join the army, and that was a bad thing. You know, if someone went to the army, he has 5. All 5 weren't going to come back alive. That was just a fact.
Almost a guarantee. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a fact. So he's like, "Nah, this is not happening." So he's
I love how all the things fell into place for them too. Just like, you know, once you're going down that right path, all the things that fall into place for you in that process
come together. Exactly.
Yeah,
so
they all come together, man.
Yeah, even
whether
though
it's your
everyone
grandfather, whether it's me, it's you, it's all we all doing the same thing, man. It's crazy.
That is exactly. You just know, even though like everybody could be against you, saying this is not going to work. What are you doing? This is stupid. There's something else. Your intuition or God or the universe or whatever you're following is saying no. Yeah. This is gonna work, and it all did. Like it all lined up for him. Like the kids were all helped get medical checked, and he had all this opportunity.
And he came there with like nothing, right? Like he had a few dollars in his pocket.
Yeah, so he had the money for the plane ticket. So there's something funny here too. So when they were at the airport, they went in to check in, and he knew one of the soldiers. Like they had, police kind of who was working there,
security guard type thing, whatever. Yeah,
like probably a police and like the management of the police. He was one of his friends, and he was like, "Oh, what? You're here? You're traveling to Australia? Your 5 kids and your wife? Okay, I'm going to take care of you. So he made them. So normally they only paid for economy tickets. Okay. But he put them all 7 of them in first class. Now, they did not know they did not know they were in first class until they had to change planes in transit in Singapore, and they had to change planes. Then they went on another plane into economy. They're like, what happened? Wait, they gave us the wrong seats. What's going on here? They didn't know. It was the first time they've all been on a plane. So they were just all like, wait. Something's going on here. And he realized that his friend hooked him up and he got all 7 of them on first class. So I thought, so it's like, okay, everything's lining up here. Like it's all kind of going well. And he ended up having what was left in his pocket for like Australian dollar wise. In Australia, he had 7, his 5 boys, his wife and himself, and only $30 in their pocket, in his pocket. That's all he had. $30. So he went from the bus to because he had a cousin in Melbourne, from the bus to his cousin's house was going to be $37. Now, the bus driver was a lady. She only saw that he had $30 in his pocket. She's like, keep the money. Don't pay for anything. Got the 7 of them on the bus and took him to her. He's like, that's another sign. Like, all these things, like, you know, it's like I didn't even have to. It was all flowing. It was in flow, you know.
Everything working out. Everything coming together.
Everything coming together. And then when he was with his cousin, he kind of, I think, there were 7 of them, and they're moving in with his cousin. I guess his cousin and his partner weren't making them feel comfortable. I guess so there's 7 of them too, which make kind of sense. But after 2 days, they rented a house. And my grandfather, when he got to Australia, he went to the trade office. So the unemployment office, okay? And he went to them. He's like, okay, what is the highest paying trade? Because he didn't have anything. So he just wanted to know. He's like, oh, a fitter and turner. I think something in mechanical machinery, something like that. He's like, okay, I'm a fitter and turner. He wasn't. So he just put his name down, got a job as a fitter and turner. 2 weeks later, he became the manager of this company as a fitter and turner. And he was working for a few years, and he was the highest paying trade. He was able to support all of them. My grandmother was working in a factory as well called Red Tulip. I think they were making chocolate. Red Tulip. I don't know if that's in the US, but yeah, so she was working there too. And the 5 kids had to go to school. Now, my father was 3 at the time, so they had to lie about his age because no one was home to take care of him. So they kind of put him up a year to put him in school. So on my dad's technically Australian certificate, it says 1968 when he's born, but he was born in 1967. So
that's awesome.
But yeah, it's like, what are they? It's like, oh, I got to do what you got to do. So I put them all in school, all 5 kids make it happen. They both had to work. But so by 1975 or 73, he owned a supermarket, a charcoal chicken shop. So charcoal chicken, like just a chicken, fish and chicken kind of shop. Not fish, chips and chicken, like you guys call, I think, chips French fries in the US.
Yeah,
hot chips, hot chips.
It would be the equivalent of Chick-fil-A over here, probably.
Something like that, yeah. And then he also had a milk bar. A milk bar, like a convenience store. That's what you guys would call it there, I think, too. He was one of the competitors against like our major supermarket chains, which are Coles, Richie's, and Safeway. Or Richie's wasn't there at the time, Coles and Safeway. And they were going, and he was like going against...
Holding his own against the big boys.
Yeah.
That's
which
awesome.
I was like, yeah, that was really, really awesome. And they had that till about, I think, the 80s, like 1980 something. They had the supermarket. But then one day, now we don't know, like insurance companies back then were just horrible. One day somebody burnt the place down.
Ooh.
And they had insurance, but the insurance companies were horrible. They never gave them anything. They burnt it. And it was like it went really bad. And they ended up having to sell the convenience store and the other place too. And to pay the lawyers. They're paying the lawyers, all this money. Lawyers did nothing. They didn't get anything. But in that time, they managed to buy a piece of land and move. But on that land, there was a shed. Now, because my grandfather and grandmother both went into heavy depression because they're like, what just happened? We just lost everything. They were living in the shed. Now, it's a shed that has no floor.
Oh, wow.
it didn't have, so they went to nothing, and they started like building a house, but it took some time for it, just with the 5 boys and my grandfather and my grandmother, to build the house and get it going. But
Sure.
and then my grandfather had to go back to working for somebody else at the company again. They had a place for him, and at the time too, my uncles were starting to work and put money into the family as well. And then by 1991, that's when my father and his brothers and my grandfather started a chocolate factory. And they started making bars. So they started making Sentosa. It's called Sentosa Health Foods. So they got the name off one of the islands in Singapore. It's called Sentosa Island. They really liked the name, so they went with that. And they started, they make bars. They make sesame bars. They make quinoa. They make Turkish Delight bars.
But they call it health food.
Yeah, it's health foods. There's sesame bars, and then they make
cool.
they're making pistachio bars and all these kind of different kind of bars. And they're in that now with the that's where they've settled. But they started that in 1991.
So tell me about one of your favorite memories with him as a kid growing up.
I like, sitting down and just listening to his stories. For me, they've obviously been
or one of his stories.
inspirational.
You could share that too.
One of his stories. What?
Yeah, either one.
Let me think. What I really like what a big memory for me with my grandfather is having everybody come over to the house. The whole family. He loved food. I love his passion for food, and when he was eating as well. Just, those people who are just really passionate about food, like good food, and you just see their enjoyment when they're eating.
Yeah.
I just like enjoyed watching him like really love food and yeah.
You enjoy watching him enjoy himself, kind of thing.
Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot, and that to me,
That's
like,
great.
yeah. So whenever I'm eating something that I know he'd love, he just always pops in my mind. But yeah, like I think a big like going to my grandfather's house and just like, having the whole family over in the summer and having all this food and having him, like, that's just like a clear memory in my mind. And he's always wanting to celebrate and everyone come together and like, he's always like happy kind of person too. Like he's just always wanting to have fun. A very fun guy, wanting everyone to get together and just like, he's very extroverted, life of the party kind of guy too. And those are my like best memories of him. And I really like to, like, recently before he passed away, he was really getting into his coin collection. And he collected all these coins, and he was just so fascinated, and he'll sit there and tell you a story about each coin. And that's probably the most recent memory that I have of him in my head. But yeah, it's been 1.5 years, 2 years, and their house, nobody's touched or moved anything. Yeah, so
keep it just the same.
Yeah, they've kept it just the same. There's probably some things that I want, like I'd want maybe like some of his coins, because like I love hearing some stories about that, and just for me. And
well, there'll be a time and a place for all that once it's right and everything.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like I always, with his story and his life story and things that he's done and accomplished and where he's been and setbacks that he had, and then he keeps trying again, and that's all. Like I think I've gotten it all from him. Beautiful. And yeah.
If everything were to go to plan, if all your wildest dreams come true, everything comes to fruition exactly the way that you envision it, what does your life look like 10 years from now?
10 years from now. So I would be almost 40. That's how 10 years from now.
Welcome to the old people's club.
Yeah. I'm almost 30 now, so I'll be almost, like, I'm 29. So,
what does life look like for Tiffany at 40?
Okay, at 40.
Perfect world.
Oh, perfect world. Okay. Perfect world at 40. Well, I've hopefully maybe had 1 or 2 children, have a family, and I am married. I want to be married. I would like to be married.
Maybe in the reverse order there, but
yeah, married. I'd like to be married and like have met this person that adds a lot to my life. And
what does that person look like to you?
That person, wow, that's something that I've thought about so much. I think one big thing that I really want in that person is somebody who continues to explore themselves and wants to develop as a person and progress and grow. If, that's probably my ultimate thing that I want in that person, and they're good-hearted and warm and enthusiastic to see me. I think that's something that I've realized. Like, I need that. I need this when I see that person. They're enthusiastic to see me. That's when I think it like touches my heart the most.
Valued. You feel valued.
Yeah, I feel valued. Exactly, I feel valued. Yeah, so I don't know when. I haven't met this person yet, so I don't know when they will come into my life, but hopefully soon. I don't know.
You're married, you got the kids, and then so what does that day look like?
And then so I have the kids, and I would say, I don't know, like if it's on a weekend, obviously we would be, I'd like to. Obviously, with my whole podcast, I want to be self-employed. I want to be an entrepreneur, and I want to start this other company that I've envisioned for the last few years. But it's a bit bigger than that company that I was talking to you about. A bit bigger than what I can see right now.
Got some big plans in the work for sure.
I do have huge plans in the work, but that's going to require a lot of work. But I know I'll get there. So I want to be like have that company up and running, and there's like I want the base of that to be not just in, say, Australia or Melbourne, but there's a base in a few places, like in Madrid, somewhere in the US. There's a few of those bases.
A network.
A network
a
of kind of
network.
Exactly. And, essentially, like the company is about a lot of people working together for the individual, with the individual who needs to better themselves. Essentially.
Well, and what's so cool about that concept is it's right in line with what you're doing now with the visioning and the vision board and the using the power of the subconscious. I mean, all those affirmations, all of what you're learning and getting good at now, all that's going to apply directly to this new company and this business that you hope to see.
Yeah.
As your main.
My main thing. This is what I see myself
your
doing.
World.
Yeah. Exactly. So I want to have I'd like to have the flexibility too to live wherever I want. And yeah, like I don't want to also be all about work. I like the balance of everything else in my life too. And yeah, I guess I want to be content with everything that I've achieved. I want to make an impact in people's lives and help them grow as people. Just grow, progress on themselves.
For other people that are wanting to go down the same path that you're going down, and they're looking to you as an example of what they want to do, what advice would you give them?
You can't stop. You get knocked back. You open another door, find a back door, go under the house, go through a window, go on top of the house. There's a door somewhere. There's an opening somewhere. Find it.
Find a way.
Awesome. You can't stop. It's just something where you just. The minute you stop, that's when you failed. That's when you haven't succeeded. When you keep trying, it's the journey. You're progressing.
That's it. I love that. Beautiful. Well, I just want to say, I barely got to get to know you. We're at the very beginnings of this relationship, and it's been a real pleasure to spend time talking back and forth and seeing what it is that you're trying to do. And I'll tell you, just from an outsider looking in and meeting you for the first time, when we were talking the first time, you had said something about wanting to be not notorious, but you want to be known, and make your mark and make your presence in the world. And when I was listening to you speak, especially given some of those intros and the way that you present when you're presenting your podcast, and it was really funny because it just kind of struck me, like something came together. It was, what if you have this gift of presenting yourself, just of putting information out there in a way that's so enthusiastic and it's very inspiring, and what it is that you want, you are exactly on the path to go get it. And I think that's a really amazing thing, because usually you see people kind of getting off track and or really not knowing the right path for them. Like they think they're on the right path, but really, like when you see what their talents and their skill sets are, you question if it's exactly right or whatnot. But with you, in your case, I see you as a famous person. Straight up. Like I see you doing these great things, and I see you on a stage, and I see you having a presence, and I see people coming to you in a much grander scale than what they're doing now. So I'm really excited because I got to know you really early on in this process, and so like I get to sit back here and watch. But I am thrilled and excited and cannot wait to see what the next 5 to 10 years hold in store for you.
Thank you so much, Nate. That really, really means a lot. I'm so glad that we have met and that we're developing this friendship. And like, I'm so glad me starting this and you reaching out to me and us starting to talk. Like, I'm like, oh, I just made another great connection here. And we're going to keep developing
it. How it works, man.
Yeah.
Like the stars align for a reason, and I think people are put in your path for a reason. And I think that those reasons a lot of times are 5 and 10 years down the road. Like I see people that I'm meeting now, and I'm like, I know what we can be doing 5 years from now. I see what role they can play in my life, 5 or 10 years as we're bringing all this together. And that's definitely the case with you too. So I'm excited and really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us this morning.
Thank you so much. No, this has been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed this.
Hey y'all, thanks for listening. So, what'd you think? What did I miss? Was there a topic you wish we had covered? Was there an area of discussion you want to know more about? Or was the whole thing just too long? Please send us your questions and feedback on social media to @extraordinarypodcast or check out our website, extraordinarypodcast.net. Subscribe there for all the latest episodes, blog posts, and more. And if you're tired of living the same old ordinary life, shoot me an email, nate@extraordinarypodcast.net, and I will send you your own customizable blueprint that will walk you through step by step how to create your own extraordinary life. And if you or someone you know already fits the profile, you can submit a request to be interviewed on the website as well. Finally, if you like what you heard or learned today, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and follow the Extraordinary Podcast on all your favorite platforms like YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. And if you feel inspired, show your support for the show by donating through Patreon. It is through this financial support that we are able to continue to bring to light ordinary people living extraordinary lives. Thank you for your support, and most of all, just being you. This is Nate G, and we'll see you next week.